Happy Monday, good people, and welcome to WWT Live. On today's show, we've got an awful lot that we're going to get into, including a special guest who wants us to say hello to the bad guys.
Yeah, now I'm going to go off. This is Shayna, the Queen of Spades, Baszler, and you're watching Women's Wrestling Talk.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling network on the planet.
Happy Monday, good people, and welcome to WWT Live as part of Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling network on the planet. I am your professor, GB, Teflon G, whatever you feel like calling me. You can just call me Gerard for today. There's a lot to get into, and I do mean a lot. And we've got a very special guest hanging out with us today. We will get to our guest in just a few minutes. But let's just let you know who we're hanging out with today. Of course, she is in charge of all things Honey Pot predictions and our SmackDown watch-alongs. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Wrestling with Honey. Honey, how are you?
I am feeling fabulous.
You're ready.
I am ready.
You're clearly ready.
So ready for Monday. You know, Monday is one of my favorite days besides Friday when we're here on the watch-along. But I am super pumped for today. It's going to be great.
It's going to be a fantastic day. And of course, it's always really good when an elected official joins us. And the elected official that's joining us today is the councilman himself, Councilman Farrow. How are you, kind sir?
I'm doing very well. I got a great package today. My dad finally sent me my DVDs just in case the Civil War breaks out. We ain't got no more internet. You know, can't stream when the internet's down. So I needed some CDs and DVDs, and look at these classics.
Those are classics.
Stop playing.
Still in the covers.
Those are indeed classics. Wow.
Yeah, it's like a whole big box.
I'm impressed. I'm impressed. Well, you guys both had a good weekend. Is that right?
Oh, yes. We had a great Friday. We had a great Friday. Our watch along on Saturday. Councilman joined us. It was Friday was so awesome. What a good time.
Awesome. That's awesome. I love to hear that. My weekend was good. Had a show this weekend, gearing up for a very busy week and some more things on the way. So yeah, good times. But we're making way for a very special guest who is hanging out with us today. Now we get some really cool guests running through here. This one is really, really cool. He is a journalist who happens to work with the Atlanta Falcons. So he and I can probably have a conversation. From there, he's doing work with ESPN, and he has just penned a brand new book, which we're going to talk about. This book is near and dear to our hearts because it deals with the NWO. The book is called Say Hello to the Bad Guys, How Pro Wrestling's New World Order Changed America. We're going to get into all of that and more. Joining us on the show today is author Marc Raimondi. Marc, how are you, sir?
What's up, everybody? How's it going?
Doing well. How are you, sir?
I'm quite well. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It is a pleasure to have you on with us, man. Rocking with ESPN, and you really do write for the Falcons. Is that right?
Well, I write about the Falcons for ESPN. Yes. Training camp starts next week.
Okay.
Excellent.
Well, I'm an Atlanta guy, so that'll be I live here in Atlanta. Now, I can't say that I'm necessarily a Falcons fan. Oh, you do? Well, then we should talk. Sounds like good stuff for sure.
Yeah.
But with that said, let's get into this book because when we start talking about eras of pro wrestling, a lot of people talk about the golden era and all of these types of things, but many people look at the heyday of pro wrestling as the Attitude Era. And a big part of that is the NWO. Talk about just how it felt to watch the NWO and kind of what kind of a fan did they make you during that time?
A rabid fan, I guess I would say. I think I was already, I know I was already a big wrestling fan even before that, but that was the catalyst for the Monday Night Wars. That was the catalyst for, the most significant wrestling era, at least of my lifetime, where it became part of pop culture. It captured the zeitgeist, so to speak. You couldn't go anywhere without seeing an NWO t-shirt or an Austin 316 t-shirt, a D-Generation X t-shirt later on. Pretty sure I owned all of those 3 t-shirts back in the day. I think I was like 11 when the NWO started. Okay, so yeah. It was just it was a time period where before that, it felt like you were part of kind of like a niche like club. If you were a wrestling fan, you knew some other wrestling fans. But when that happened in '96 and beyond, everyone was watching wrestling. In school, it was the talk of school. I remember, being in a day camp in Queens, New York, when Hulk Hogan turned heel and joined the NWO, and that was the talk. The next day, it was a Monday, and all the kids, the counselors, it was the biggest thing going, and I still have vivid memories of that time period and of the NWO specifically.
Absolutely. That was such a unique time in wrestling, to your point. And so you're in New York then at this time, which is clearly WWE country, but you are obviously engrossed at this point in the NWO. What was that like amongst your wrestling friends who, still WWE was kind of the space in New York City at that point?
No, it definitely was. It was definitely New York has always been a WWF territory, right? So most of my friends, I think, were watching WWE, WWF at the time for the most part. I had gotten into WCW earlier on. I started watching like in the early 90s with, Jushin Liger and Brian Pillman. Like those guys really brought me into WCW back then, the Stings of the world and everything. 4 Horsemen. So I was already kind of into WCW. I watched the first Nitro. I remember it from the Mall of America. I was already on board with everything WCW. And then when that happened, I think it forced some of the kids that I was going to school with to change the channel. You had to go over to TNT, and there was a lot of channel flipping back then. That was a big thing. And
my God,
it wasn't like it. Look, I don't even think I know how to. I don't know if I ever learned how to work a VCR. So it was like you were flipping the channels on Monday nights, and then you would catch the replay maybe at Nitro on TNT. Right. But that was a big deal. It wasn't. We don't have this on-demand stuff. Like we didn't have that then that we have now. So you had to be in front of the television on Monday. Otherwise, you were missing stuff, and you were going to get spoiled because the next day everyone at work or school was going to be talking about it.
That last button on the remote, last channel, was your best friend during Monday.
100%.
Oh yes.
Kids don't know about that. Kids
don't understand how good they have it today. They really don't. You had to check the newspaper. They had new newspaper results, and you're either talking about it after work or school. Like, did you see it last night? Did you see it? Such good times.
Yeah.
Good times.
Yeah. Super good time. So let's get into the book. Tell me the story of how the book even came together. What inspired you to write this book? Because I understand this is your first book.
It is my first book. And to be honest with you guys, it wasn't even really my idea. It was, so I've covered combat sports for a long time, for over a decade, mainly the UFC, some boxing, also some WWE for ESPN as well. So it was 2021. I'm in a hotel room in Houston, Texas, and I'm covering a UFC card. I'm there for the UFC. It's like a Wednesday or a Thursday. And I get an email from an editor who says he is from Simon & Schuster, the publishing company, and the big publishing company. This editor is asking me in the email if I want to write a book about the NWO. So the first thing I think, boys and girls, is this is complete BS. This is a scam. There's no way this is real, right? It's like, I'm just kind of going about my merry way with my job, and this guy comes into my life and asks me if I want to write a book about the NWO. And for a kid, who grew up in the 90s and was just addicted to wrestling, obsessed with wrestling back then, and still a little bit now, if we're being honest, that was unbelievable. So basically, what happened was this editor, and I'll shout him out, Yadon Israel. He's the man. He's dope. I'm from Queens. He's from Brooklyn, and he's a little younger than me, but we grew up in the same era. Watching it, and he got to Simon & Schuster, and he wanted to find someone to write a book about the NWO, and it just so happened that I had written an article about the NWO going into the WWE Hall of Fame for ESPN, and Yadon saw that article, found my email address, emailed me, and the rest is kind of history. And once I found out that the email was real and he was a real person, I wasn't like, it wasn't a phishing scam. I wasn't gonna get my my account taken or something like that. We ended up on the phone minutes later, and we just vibed right away. And we knew that it wasn't. I mean, it was a book about the NWO and it was a wrestling book, but it was so much more than that. It was a pop culture book. It was a history book. It was a sociology book. And I mean, that era and the NWO specifically really touched people. It affected people. It impacted people. And it still does to this day. And that's what the book is kind of about.
Yeah, I love that. If you guys are just joining us, we're working with an amazing author from ESPN. His name is Marc Raimondi. He's written a new book called Say Hello to the Bad Guys, How Pro Wrestling's New World Order Changed America. So I want to get into that title because I am curious. How do you think the NWO changed America? Because that's a larger statement than just changing pro wrestling.
It sure is. It sure is. And I mean, this is my hypothesis, right? So sad to say, I'm 39 years old. I turned 40 in a month. Awesome. But so many people who are around my age were watching wrestling back then. And it all started with the NWO in '96. That was the catalyst for this, wrestling revolution where, like I said before, it became part of the zeitgeist. It became part of culture. And the people that are my age, maybe a little bit younger, maybe a little bit older, we're all watching it then. They were in their teens, they were in their 20s, their 30s, maybe even a little bit younger than that. And now we're all grown up, and now we're making decisions, and we're part of the culture in our own little way, whether it be music or entertainment or politics or a business person, news, everything. And we all grew up watching this stuff. And how can that, which was so important to us back then, and so many people were watching it back then, how could that not shape who we are as human beings? And that's kind of my hypothesis. It's like when you watch television, when you look at cable news right now, it feels a lot like pro wrestling, doesn't it? I mean, it's like talking heads, it's manufactured conflict. I mean, politics is the same way. And I talk to people in sports news. I mean, look, it's all about, there's no news anymore. It's all like talking heads and conflict and people cutting promos on each other. That's everything now on television and in politics, entertainment, what have you, and I really think, and I really believe that really all started because we grew up in this wrestling generation. It's the pro wrestlingification of America. That's really where we're at right now. And you see it, you see it in politics. I mean, something happened over the weekend where, dude was bleeding and held up his hands, and it's like, this is pro wrestling. I mean, I know it was real and everything. I know it was real. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but this is pro wrestling. This is the stuff that we know, that we embrace, and that we like. And I think it's all because of the '90s, and it all started with the NWO.
Yes.
You raised such an interesting point with that, because you're right. Those who were kids during that era, this now becomes a throwback to childhood. And because it becomes a throwback to childhood, you get influenced by that. And then when you get in position to be able to raise the flag for that, you do that. And it's a lot more influential. And to that point, I can't tell you how many posts I saw comparing this weekend to pro wrestling. It was
all it was missing was JR commentary. That was it. If you'd have put JR's commentary on the video, you'd have been like, so there's a next after this.
God.
Yeah.
And it's like people who don't know wrestling don't even know they don't even understand. They see what they're watching, but they don't even understand that this is all really influenced by wrestling in its own way. I mean, everything that we see and encounter in some ways is influenced, in my opinion, by wrestling. And people, I'm trying to prove that the NWO changed America. People who don't even know what the NWO is are feeling the effects of that change and of that influence.
Absolutely. So I've got to throw this question at you. Given the boom we are currently having in the pro wrestling space, do you think that pro wrestling right now is kind of at the level it was during the Attitude Era, the NWO? Do you think it's greater? Do you think we're not there yet? What are your thoughts?
I don't think it's at the level that it was, honestly. And that's not necessarily because of wrestling specifically, but I think it's just because there's so many more things now. You know, we have so many things. We have phones and we have social media and we have, you know, multiple screens in front of us 24/7. You know, everyone is kind of in front of their screen, and there's just so many things to do. There's streaming. I mean, back then it was like there was cable and there was regular television, and that was it. I mean, that was really all you had. So it was like there were fewer things, and wrestling just happened to be one of the biggest things of those few things, and that's why it took hold the way it did. I don't think we're at that level now, and I'm not sure if we'll ever get to that level again, just because of that. We just have so many options. You know, technology has taken us, you know, in the last 20 years, like to a place that I don't think we ever could have imagined when we were kids, right? So, I mean, look, it's big now, and WWE is making more money than ever, and I feel like it's definitely solidified itself as part of American culture, right? You know, WWE. But as far as like capturing the zeitgeist, I mean, I see people sometimes with Bloodline t-shirts, you know, sometimes with a Roman Reigns t-shirt, but man, if you were chilling in 97, 98, you could not, I mean, you know, you go to the mall in New York and, you know, people rolling up in the Austin 316 t-shirts, and that was the DX, I mean, and I see more Austin 316 NWO t-shirts even now than I do the current stuff. So I really think it's hard to say it's the same.
I was literally wearing an NWO shirt last week for my Honey Pot predictions as well too, and I like did a little Scott Hall impression with the "Hey Yo." So it's kind of funny. The timing is just perfect.
Right. when you wear your NWO shirt and you go outside and you're in the wilderness, people say something, right? Almost every time someone says something. Do they not?
Every time. And they always with the same gesture.
It happened to me. It happened to me yesterday at the airport. I was visiting my parents. I was visiting my parents in Fort Myers, Florida. They're from New York, so of course they moved to Florida. That's just what New Yorkers do. That
is.
So I always wear an NWO shirt when I travel, because I've learned it's kind of like a guerrilla marketing technique, right? Because I have the book coming out, and and I'm putting my stuff on the belt, you know, to go through security. And female TSA agent woman, who was probably a little bit older than me, was like finally a man with some fashion sense.
I like it.
And she's like, how many times do people throw up the wolf when you wear the shirt? I was like, every time. I had another. By the way, shout out to TSA. They are big wrestling fans, because every single time I wear this when I travel, the NWO, a TSA agent comments on it. One time at LAX, I had an early flight. I was going to a UFC event in Newark, New Jersey. I lived in LA at the time. So I'm at LAX. It's like 4:30 in the morning. I'm going through security. My man, TSA agent, starts singing the song as I go through the metal detector. And then he flashes this when it's just like, it's just so crazy. It really touched people. It really, really impacted people more than so many other things that are just, that just fly by and they're just kind of a meaningless part of our lives. That really, really took hold with people. There's no doubt.
Absolutely. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I actually had a quick little question for Mark. I wanted to know, in the moment, as we're going into a Monday night, and all of a sudden we see the appearance of Scott Hall coming from the crowd on WCW TV, especially just after departing with WWF at the time, is now WWE. What effect did those moments have on you the minute you saw him on that TV, and where did you think it was going to go? Did you think it would be as impactful as it was today, or what did you think?
I don't think anyone had any idea that it would have the kind of effect that it ended up having. It was, I think there's a lot of shock, because in today's world, we kind of already know what's going to happen to an extent in wrestling. There's very few surprises now with the internet and with, dirt sheets or whatever. So we kind of already a lot of people are already clued in on what's going on. There's spoilers and stuff like that. So back then that didn't exist. In 96, it was like everyone was just like chilling at home on their couch, like just taking it all in and not reading, oh, this guy's doing this, and oh, this guy's got to turn soon, and this guy's going to show up here soon. We just didn't know. So like you see Scott Hall show up, you see Razor Ramon really show up, right? We didn't know
Right.
his name was Scott Hall.
Yeah.
Right?
In our
You see
head,
Razor
in our
Ramon
head.
show up, and you're like, you just don't. What is gonna happen? And it's just like I need to see what's gonna happen next. Like I'm gonna be. That's appointment viewing. I'm gonna be in front of the television at 8 o'clock on Monday night for next night Nitro to see what the hell is gonna happen next.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So good.
No,
Such good times.
And
those,
when does that even happen now? There's like nothing that there's a appointment viewing at this rate, right? Maybe live sports, but like a show, like something episodic, that doesn't exist now. But back then, it's like they caught your attention, and it was like, this is appointment viewing. I know what I'm gonna be doing at 8 Eastern on Monday night. You can write that down. That's where I'm gonna be
every week. Yep.
Every week.
Excellent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we've got another elected official joining us. I want to make sure he gets in on this. The dude used to be a mayor and all of that. Said, welcome aboard. How are you, sir?
Former
mayor.
Newly resigned.
We'll rise again. I'm not worried.
That's very good. Well, Mark, let me ask you this. Did you have a favorite moment from the NWO?
Now, back then, or as I went back and watched over 500 hours of WCW?
Let's do both. Yeah. Back then, and then going back and rewatching, because I know when we rewatch, there's always something that we miss that we go, oh my God, that was the spot. So first, in the moment, and then when you rewatched.
In the moment, it had to be Hulk Hogan turning. I think that was the moment that I think I was 11. So I don't remember a ton from when I was 11, but I vividly remember Hulk Hogan turning, and I remember being at a camp the next day at a day camp in Queens, New York, talking to everyone about Hulk Hogan turning. That was a significant like moment of my adolescent life, Hulk Hogan turning heel, because you just couldn't believe it, right? Because you grew up with Hulk Hogan as the hero, as the good guy, as, all American. And he turns bad. And it was so crazy. And then as far as going back and watching, my favorite Nitro was the Nitro at Disney MGM Studios, where there was the backstage attack near the trailers. Yes. The one where Rey Mysterio gets thrown like a dart into the trailer. And it was really like, there was nothing in wrestling that was like that ever. It was it was just like, it felt so real. It felt so, raw, not pun intended. It felt so visceral, right? It was like, and it was like scary. And it was like, it for the first time, it was like, in WWF, like they had like TL Hopper on at that time in '96. They had like the Goon was over in WWF, and on Nitro, dudes were getting hit with baseball bats, and like they were going down and getting thrown into ambulances, and it was it just felt like a whole new layer of the genre came out on that episode. And I have a really detailed like description of that from people who were there, how they set it up and everything in the book. So that was really, really fun to watch back and remember that, like, that whole episode was just like, it was like a television masterpiece.
Yeah. So you mentioned you watched over 500 hours to prepare for this book.
That's research.
That's a lot of research. And so I'm just putting timelines together. You got the email in 2021. You've watched over 500 hours of video. When does this book hit the market?
March 25th, 2025. So about 8 months from now.
Mm-hmm. All right. So what kinds of things will we be looking forward to on the road to this release?
Good question. Well, first of all, it's already available for pre-order. So you can pre-order it now anywhere you can get your books. It's on Amazon right now. So you can just pop on there and pre-order it for March 25th. And I would imagine that I will be promoting it in many different ways. I think there is talk of some kind of a tour, some kind of a book tour. Nice. Hopefully I'll be on with you guys again before it drops in March. But sure. I mean, it feels like a little bit away, but I know it's going to go fast. And I'm nervous, y'all. Like I'm nervous about this. Like, this is my first book, and I hope I didn't mess it up, because this means a lot to me.
I'm sure you did a great.
Yeah,
sure, it's gonna be great.
Yeah, it's gonna be great.
So we have dropped the link to the pre-order on Amazon in our chat, so you guys can go ahead and click that link and pre-order right now. Again, the book is scheduled to hit on March the 25th, 2025, just a couple of weeks before WrestleMania, which is going to be incredible. Again, the name of the book is Say Hello to the Bad Guys, How Pro Wrestling's New World Order Changed America. Now, Mark, you're going to hang out with us for the rest of the show. Is that right?
I am. Yes, I am.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure we get all of your social deets and all of those things before we get off the air, so no worries about that. But we'll dig into some of the news and certainly get your perspective on this, because a lot of things have been going on. And I'm going to jump to one of the late-breaking stories, which I'm very intrigued to get your opinion on. And this is one of those stories that when I saw it, I was like, is this for real? Like, I had to check a few places to make sure this is real. So apparently, for the longest time, whenever you came into WWE, you usually could not use your previous name. However, you were known in whatever organization you were in. Equally, when you were leaving the WWE, you also had to change your name when you were going to other organizations. So apparently, that is changing significantly. So according to Brian Alvarez, he says that these new TKO deals are such that when you go into the company, they're going to trademark whatever name you're bringing into the company. And then when you leave, they hand everything over to you, which is a wild thought. And then the flip side to it is when you're leaving WWE, if you have established a name in WWE and you leave, you can keep your name. Now, we've kind of silently started to see this happen with Mustafa Ali, for instance, and not too many people asked a lot of questions when that happened. But of course, on the way in, we're seeing Ethan Page, we're seeing Sean Spears, we will likely see Stephanie Vaquer. So Mark, let me get your thoughts on this, because this is groundbreaking. When you mentioned the NWO, they didn't go over as Razor and Diesel. It took a few weeks before we figured out what they would be called. What do you think about this huge piece of news?
Yeah, not only were they not called Razor Ramon and Diesel, there was an entire lawsuit about this, right? In 96, WWF sued WCW, and the lawsuit went on for 4 years, and they ended up settling, and the WWF, won money in the case because they said that WCW was using their trademark. So this actually does kind of relate directly to back then to that lawsuit and to the NWO. Really interesting, and I think I covered the UFC, like I mentioned, for a long time, so I'm very familiar with TKO, and I'm very familiar with Endeavor and how they do business, and I wonder how much that plays in. I wonder if maybe they're worried about a lawsuit because UFC fighters, UFC does not own their name and likeness so much. They do to an extent, but it isn't like they can't go and use like their nickname in another promotion. It's like Rampage Jackson, when he left the UFC, he couldn't use Rampage Jackson in Bellator or another promotion. Granted, part of it is his real name, but you guys get what I'm saying. I mean, that's just kind of how it's been in the UFC, and everyone pretty much uses their real name in the UFC, but there are nicknames that people are known by more than their real name. So I think it must be something to do with that, that corporate structure, but very surprising because that was a big part of what WWE did, right? It was like they made sure that whoever it is, they changed their name so they could own that name, they can own that likeness forever. It could be in the video games, it could be in the cards, it could be in, what have you, the merch. Even when they leave and they become whatever name, what's that funny joke? Like, XYZ is in the Impact Zone, like some ridiculous takeoff on their WWE name. I guess that's no more.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Stead, what do you think about this? Because this is a major piece of news.
I think it's genius, actually, because think it gives the company way more staying power in other arenas. Like, it takes a while to start calling people their new names. And the first thing that comes to mind for me is like the big controversy when we had Gunther versus Walter and how that transition took a while to get used to. But now, as more people, like, it's fair to say the WWE may not be able to keep a lot of these guys in the fold. I'm not saying their roster is bloated, but there are people that will leave over time. And now, with allowing them to keep that name, you have a little bit more staying power to what you created. And I'm talking about the power of like social media, YouTube, and being able to, hey, this person used to be over here, you can watch a lot of their matches. I think TNA does this very well. When somebody pops up somewhere new, they're tweeting right away, hey, look at the greatest hits of this person's work here in our brand. So I think they'll be able to do more of that going forward, which is smart as hell.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a brilliant concept. Honey, your thoughts on this?
I think this is really cool, especially not only just for what said, but I also think that it's also great for the talent as well. That way it'll be easy for, a lot of people who have followed their work to be able to follow them elsewhere. It's an easy transition for them, and it's a win-win for both cases. So I think this is really cool. And honestly, we all know this never would have happened before this era. So it is indeed we are still ushering in new things for this new era, and it's absolutely amazing to witness. So I think that's really cool, especially for the talent though.
So Councilman, let me ask you this, because we've seen, for instance, when Trinity left TNA and came back to WWE, she resumed her WWE persona as Naomi. But when Shawn Spears came back to WWE, he did not resume his persona as Ty Dillinger. Do you think if a certain CEO were to come back to WWE, she would keep the Monet, or she'd go to the bank?
No, he didn't. No, he didn't. He went there.
I told myself I was going to keep it PG, and then you say Mark going to be here all day. Okay, you know what? I got my hold on. I'm a professional today. Hey, you don't start me with that question. To what Jeffrey just said, I feel like Sasha Banks has more stock at this point if she was to come back. Actually, no, I'll take that back. I'm at a 50-50 with that. Okay. Because I think in the WWE, she's left such a staple there that everybody's gonna know her by face. So if you call her Sasha, if you call her Mercedes, you already know as soon as you see her walk out, you know who that is.
Oh boy! Oh Lord!
You don't say.
You know what? Boy. I'm gonna be the one to say what I know Councilman really wants to say. I don't want Mercedes Monet. I don't want to follow the Monet. I want to follow the bank. Okay, I'd rather Sasha Banks. My opinion.
I mean, at the end of the day, we talk about money, right?
Listen, but it's not just money. It's not just.
At the end of the day, we talk about what prints money, right?
You know what, Cedric, behave.
So I just know, me personally, I'm not saying Ash by Elegance. I'm gonna call her Dana Brooke. That's just me.
Yeah, absolutely not. I've never called her that. I can't.
You are Dana Brooke. I mean, same thing with Finn Balor now, though. I'm like, I'm not calling you Prince Devitt. I caught you as Finn Balor. You Finn Balor till you retire.
Interesting. So Mark, I want to pose this to you. Which do you think she would return as? And do you actually see any difference between Sasha Banks and Mercedes Moné?
Not yet. I don't see too much of a difference just yet. I mean, she's going to return as Sasha Banks, though. There's no doubt. I mean, unless the name Mercedes Moné gets super over, I don't think it. I mean, it's going to be whatever name is more over, right? No offense to Ty Dillinger. I don't think that, on the main roster, Ty Dillinger was not over. Ty Dillinger wasn't much of anything on the main roster. So Shawn Spears is kind of a way to repackage him as someone else, kind of a different character, right? Kind of a different version of the character. I don't think that would be necessary for Sasha Banks, for Mercedes Moné. I think Sasha Banks would be, if that happens, it'll be Sasha Banks back in WWE.
That's 2-1.
Well, if they do what they did with Shawn Spears and they keep throwing the 10 out there randomly, I mean, we know who it is, so I'm pretty sure we'll respond accordingly should that happen. But I do think this is a massive move that you'll be able to come in as who you are. My goodness, we saw it with Tama Tonga, Tongaloa. It's actually been happening, but there's not been a formal announcement about it, which I think is really significant. So kudos to WWE, and I'm excited to see what this looks like going forward for whoever comes or goes. And speaking of people who have been on the way, last week, all of the talk was about Stephanie Vaquer, her leaving CMLL. We started getting into some of the details on Friday, and it looks like we were right in that regard. But what we know for sure is Saturday and Sunday. She indeed did appear at WWE live events in Mexico City and Monterrey. In both situations, she took on Isla Dawn, walked away with wins, and then on WWE socials told us, NXT, I'll see you soon. Mark, what are your thoughts on the debut of Stephanie Vaquer and her looks like trip coming up to NXT?
I think she's a star. You know, I've been a big fan of her for a while. I watched her in CMLL, watched her, doing the crossovers with New Japan and AEW, and there's a certain intensity and athleticism that she brings to the table in her matches that others do not have. Of course, that's a general statement. Obviously, there's a lot of great women's wrestlers in WWE, but she has something different. What is it? The kids are saying now? Aura. That's the word, right? The kids. I'm almost 40, y'all. So yeah, I think I'm a huge fan, and I think that she brings something to the table. I just don't want her to fall into the same place that a lot of Latinos fall into when they go to WWE. I don't want to see her in the LWO. I don't want to see her in Legado del Fantasma. I don't want to see all that. I want to see her as a solo act. She's legit. She's the truth. I think she's one of the best women's wrestlers in the world right now outside WWE, and she's going to get a chance to prove it on the big stage.
Councilman, your thoughts on the debut of Stephanie Vaquer and what this could bring to NXT?
I caught a few of the reels from the Super Show. And then again, to another point, like Jeffrey said, it did look like she belonged. It looks like she has been there. This is where she's supposed to be, and it just fit like a glove. And so I think it's good to see her Tuesday because, we don't have too many Latinos no more in the market at NXT. We recently had one that just got put in the ground, so we need that replacement.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
Vice City is gone. So, Vaquerville, I guess, is about to come in.
Vaquerville.
It's taking place, right? You know what I'm saying?
I think what Sed's doing is like, the turnaround. Like he's not talking to you no more.
It's
Aqua shirts are out.
Is the sea of blue again?
This is good. This is
it
good.
A sea of blue again?
Finish what you were saying. I'll get to my point.
That was it. I think she's going to do wonders in NXT. Just like I think this was a good fit, a good signing for them to have with her, and I can't wait to see what she does.
Honey, your thoughts on the arrival of Stephanie Vaquer?
I think this is great. Also, the fact that on the WWE social, she got a rub from El Campeon, Damian Priest as well, who was pretty much giving her some advice about going forward and, making an impact. And I think she's done a good job of doing that. Isla Dawn was a great contender for her to have as well, because Isla Dawn is a fascinating athlete. But I definitely see a lot of star power in this girl. She's going to be an absolute problem for all the rosters in WWE, for sure.
She definitely will. Now, I don't want to poke the bear. I don't. But Seth, I do have to ask, because I know you were concerned about Stephanie Vaquer, Delta, potentially Julia, all making their way to NXT. Now that you've seen her in a WWE ring, and she said she's coming to NXT, are you still concerned about what that could do to the roster of women that are already there?
No, I slept it off, and I think it'll be a great addition. I'm actually happy they ripped the Band-Aid off. I'm sad that it was Isla Dawn, because she's half of the women's tag team champions, and I think they should do more with those belts. But I fell in love with Stephanie, the wrestler, at Resurgence the past 2 years in Long Beach and Ontario. So she's a great worker. I'm interested to see Hickenbottom get her hands on her and do a storyline, because her in-ring work is going to have so much staying power. I'm interested to see what type of storylines they can build around her to drive a character home with the audience here in the States. So I think that'll be telling. I think right away, it wouldn't be bad if you put her in a title picture, because we have two titles now. I think a contrast of styles with Kalani Jordan would be amazing right off the bat. But I think she'll fit in with that locker room, that women's division right away, just because of the type of experience she has. She's carrying 15 years of experience, been wrestling since she was 16. So I think that alone is going to be able to mesh well with a lot of these people that are coming out of the NIL program.
Do I dare
but to rip the Band-Aid off real quick? Am I worried about my clients? Absolutely not. And you know what? I didn't get to ask any questions. I'm privy with Marc's work. I was introduced to Marc by Andrew Feldman, who's also at ESPN. So I'm familiar with Marc as a combat sports writer and follow all his work there. So I'm pretty sure Marc is very familiar with who Valerie Lareda is. So I just want to ask you, Marc, have you been to Vice City?
I know Valerie quite well. I know Valerie quite well. I've interviewed her a number of times. I know her team. I know her teammates at American Top Team when she was fighting. I know her manager, her agent really well. I wish her nothing but the best. You know, I'm really happy to see her excel in NXT. She had a really, really bright future at MMA. You know, I mean, she was a real prospect in her early 20s in MMA and Bellator, and she took a risk in a sense, going to something that she really didn't have any experience doing in WWE, and she's been killing it. And I think that she's super young, and the ceiling is very high.
Do I sense some forgiveness? Because you addressed Sean as Hickenbottom, Mr. Mayor.
That's a very good question. You know, I'm easing up a little bit, just a little bit.
This is good.
I didn't know he was here again. When were you? Well, were you sworn in?
He brought the T-shirt back.
Oh, that's the sworn in part right there. The T-shirt.
Yeah. Because remember, he said he had hung up the T-shirt. He
was done.
Turned it in. Yeah,
forgiveness goes a long way. You know, it's a process. Forgiveness is a process, especially for someone as stubborn as the mayor of Vice City.
I can't leave the people behind. That's what I'm realizing. You know.
But I will say I agree with you though, Cedric. I think someone like Lola, though, with all of those women there, it will bump them up. It will force them to step up, like the Kalanis, like the Lola Vices. I think it will make them step up because there's only so much you can learn in the PLE, and what you'll be able to take off of these women who have been, you know, all around the world and done this stuff. I think it's just going to sharpen them even more.
So there's a question on the floor that I want to pose to everybody. Boza asked, he says, I don't see Stephanie in NXT for a while, maybe 6 months, a year at the most. How long do we see Stephanie Vaquer in NXT before she moves to Raw or SmackDown? Marc, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, probably not very long, I would say. She's definitely ready for the main roster. There's no doubt from an in-ring standpoint. I think they're probably going to try to, you know, her English is not perfect. They're probably going to try to brush her up on her promos. They don't cut promos in CMLL, right? That's not something that she has a lot of experience doing. Right. So, especially not in English, you know. So they're gonna brush her up on that, you know, for a few months, and you know, try to get her up to speed in that regard. You know, teach her how to find the hard cam, and you know, this is a different world than Arena Mexico. Arena Mexico is amazing, but you know, this is a whole different. This is a television product that is not. That's a very live crowd, you know, situated product, and yeah, I mean. And also, Cedric, Stephanie Vaquer has some experience in MMA as well. She did some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. She did some striking in her past. So maybe a little, you know, match with Lola Vice is in the offing in a few months. Latino versus Latino. They can, you know, cut promos in Spanish on each other.
You know what? That'd be fun. That's a good point.
That would be fun.
That was supposed to happen with Roxanne and
Lola,
wasn't it?
You see, honey, you see, now it was there. You saw me not go for it. And you saw like, yo, we're gonna let them have this, okay?
She said Lola said Roxanne wasn't real Spanish. That was on TV.
Yeah, but they didn't necessarily have the whole exchange in Spanish like they advertised.
Roxanne can't speak Spanish.
I call false advertisement.
You know, she spoke real fluently. Them pop rocks she was hitting that.
Damn it.
Wow.
She spoke that very
fluent. So
just to get back on track, I think Stephanie will be in NXT for at least a year for all the things Marc said. Find the hard cam, learning the American way and how they do a television program. I think her work will be great, but you got to keep in mind that we're about to go to a new platform. So you want to keep as many stars in that platform in the CW as you can. Because I think for everything Marc said, if she jumps the main roster right away and the main roster audience isn't as familiar with her, I know the Mexico City show did well. She was received well, but it seems like you'd be destined for like Legado or LWO, at least for a stint. I mean, hell, look at Andrade. He was LWO speed champion, and we're still trying to like figure out a spot. I wouldn't want that to happen to Stephanie.
Yeah, I think her and NXT would work, especially with like with the TNA stuff going on. I think this is the perfect time for her to be there. And to Marc's point, where she gets to learn all the stuff that goes into doing a live show promotion and stuff like that, especially with where it is. I would say start her there first and then move her up.
Honey, what do you think?
As far as Stephanie Vaquer and how long?
Yeah, how long is she in NXT? Yeah.
I mean, depending on how big, like how, I mean, it could easily be on a level of like where the crowd gets really behind her so much that they're like, all right, let's just bump her up. Like, cause everybody just wants to see her every week. But I think, I don't give her a whole, maybe not a whole year. Maybe, you know what? Yeah. I feel like she can have like if she grabs the title somehow, she can have like one of those steady reigns that, you know, could make an impact and create, create history in some other format for her as well. Being a Latina in NXT now. I think she could have I think she'll have like a solid, like probably a solid year, nothing more, nothing less. Especially with the way they're booking her, like, they're saying that she's a total star from the jump. And, considering her history, it seems like anywhere this girl goes, it's going to turn to gold for her anyway. So all roads for Stephanie Vaquer definitely are going to lead to gold and history-making moments for sure. So I think she could end up being like one of the most remembered recent NXT champions, whichever, if it's North American or the women's title as well.
Yeah, I think we're going to see her there probably for 6 months. And the reason being is I think she's going to Raw on Netflix in 2025. And one of the big reasons for that is Netflix is going to be the home where internationally people get to watch WWE. So for that international audience who is already familiar with Stephanie Vaquer, that's a great place for them to see her on a regular basis. So I think that could definitely work. I don't see her there, obviously, for 2 years or anything like that. She doesn't need that. All she's there to learn primarily is, as Marc said, hard cam, promos, that type of thing. And she's gonna be amazing. So excited to see that. I'm interested to see how quickly it'll be before we see her. Do we see her as soon as this Tuesday on NXT? I don't know. But certainly time will tell. With that said, speaking of NXT, some big news for NXT came out today as they will have 2 more PLEs that will this time go to arenas. Now, we saw with their last arena show that happened Money in the Bank weekend, that was a really, really big deal. It looked great. It felt great. Well, now they've got 2 more shows headed on the road. So it'll start in September. September the 1st will be No Mercy. NXT No Mercy will be in Denver, Colorado. And then in October the 27th, 2 days before my birthday, they will be in Hershey, Pennsylvania for NXT Halloween Havoc. And of course, by the time we get it's going to be great. By the time we get to Halloween Havoc, of course, they will be on the CW as that starts on October the 1st. Marc, let me ask you this, because there had been questions before about NXT and their ability to travel during the 2.0 era. Now that it seems like the 2.0 era seems to be over, do you feel confident in the strength of this NXT roster to travel and fill up these arenas?
I do. I think you've seen a big improvement over the last, 6 to 9 months in NXT as far as really everything. I mean, the in-ring work and just the level of stars that the wrestlers there have elevated themselves to become. The Trick Williamses of the world and people like that. Kalani Jordan, I'm really high on her and her future. I don't think it's a problem at all. And you guys noted that they're going to be on CW, so it's going to almost be like its own standalone product in some ways, because it's going to be separate from where WWE is, you know, where Raw is, where SmackDown is. It's going to be on CW, and it's gonna have maybe in some ways a completely different audience, because it's going to be on like regular network television in some places, and it's going to be really interesting to see how that develops and what that looks like and what the strategy is going to be, because it's not going to be, you know, on the same channel as Raw. It's not going to be on the same channel as SmackDown, at least in the United States. So yeah, I don't see that being a problem. And as they continue to add more people, not just the NIL people, you know, the Stephanie Vaquers and the Julias, you know, because she's coming along soon, and I think she's going to be just a massive star in WWE and NXT. If you're familiar with her work in Japan, I think that's pretty clear, right? I mean, she just oozes, you know, that star potential. So yeah, I don't see that being a huge issue at all.
You bring up a very interesting point, and Councilman, I want to ask you, do you think the NXT product changes in any way in moving to the CW, given the fact that, again, they'll be on network TV versus cable TV versus ultimately streaming in January? Do you think that product changes at all from what we see?
Oh yeah, I think it just increases, like to Mark's point. Like, I think it just gets bigger. I think you and I had the discussion before of if NXT would even start going on tours a little bit more into different not just arenas. What were the ones we said that were after, like before an arena? That size?
Kind of those event centers and things like that.
Yeah. And I think that just is a testament to like what you said with the new PLEs added. I think it will just become its own standalone product and really be a place where it's like, hey, although they bumped up Tommaso Ciampa, I remember him having a conversation of, due to his age, he was like, he'd rather just stay in NXT. He didn't really see himself like going into the WWE and stuff. I could see a few people that's just like, hey, I don't mind this remaining my home because of the potential product and how high it can really get now being on the CW, now having its own type of platform. It's just the sky's the limit.
Yeah, I think it's going to get really interesting to see what happens with NXT, but congratulations to them on these two upcoming PLEs in arenas. Again, No Mercy, September the 1st, and then Halloween Havoc on October the 27th. Much closer is this weekend, Slammiversary, and kind of the big news about Slammiversary is it is sold out. A 4,000 seat venue. And that's significant because they were pretty much doing 1,000, maybe 2,000 seat venues prior to that. This is one of the biggest shows they're going to be doing, and it's sold out. Mark, let me ask the question that seems to be all around us. How much of this sold out Slammiversary do you attribute to the TNA NXT crossover?
I think probably quite a bit, right? Because you saw a little bit of an increase when TNA was doing stuff with AEW, with Kenny Omega stuff. You saw them kind of have a little bit of a bump up, and, you know, then it went down for a little bit. And, you know, I really hope TNA finds its footing. It always feels like whenever they have momentum, something happens and they kind of like go on a downside again, and they have to fight their way back up, and they fight their way back up, and then something hits and they go down again. And it's just like, I don't know what is going to happen. And they've managed to stay alive for this long and to survive and to put on, you know, good shows and to have a pretty good product for a long time now. It's just like, how do they get, you know, how do they cut through the noise of all the wrestling on television and all the wrestling out there on streaming? How do they really stand out? And that's kind of the big challenge for me, you know, because like TNA is not on my top, you know, my top list of what I'm going to watch per week, right? There's only so many hours in a week. You know what I'm saying? Like, and WWE is on 3 nights out of 5 on the weekdays, right? If you throw in if there's a PLE, that's going to be another day. If it's an NXT PLE, that could be another day. So it's like you got AEW on Wednesdays. If you're a fan of, you know, other stuff, independent or Japan or Mexico or anything like that, you know, those are other days of the week. And it's like, when do you know, what does TNA bring to the table that is going to make you want to watch every week, and not only just watch but also buy a ticket, because that's been the thing that they've been struggling at, you know, buying tickets. And I don't know what that is yet. They have great talent, you know, it's a good product, they have good in-ring work, they have good characters, but what is going to cut through the noise? What's going to make them stand apart? Maybe it is this NXT crossover. I don't know.
Sed, what are your thoughts on this situation with TNA selling out Slammiversary, and how much do you think can be attributed to this NXT crossover?
I don't want to say all of it, but it's worth noting that a lot of the crossover work we've been doing behind the scenes with the open challenges and things of that nature, people are probably expecting something like that, which is probably why it is a big turnout. So I think it's just going to add more fuel to the fire with the speculations and what could possibly happen. So I think it's a good move for TNA to keep leaning into this. And I think eventually what we expected to happen at Battleground is we'll see a representative of TNA hold an NXT title and vice versa, just because the partnership is showing that it's being fruitful.
Well, and so that leans into what I was going to ask you, honey, is, you know, here we are a few months in now. It's about a month and a half, almost 2 months into this partnership involving TNA and NXT. Looking at how TNA has this sold out situation, and we've seen NXT talent on TNA and vice versa, how would you measure, if you were rating the crossover, how would you measure the partnership on a scale of 1 to 10?
On a scale of 1 to 10 right now, I got to give it a lucky number 7. I'll give it a lucky number 7. It's pretty high up there because ever since the moment it happened when we saw Jordynne Grace appear, it was one of the big. That is definitely going down as one of the biggest moments to ever happen in pro wrestling or in NXT history, TNA history, period, in my opinion. But I give it a lucky number 7. I feel like there's more cooking. There's a lot more that's cooking. And I feel like there's like that was just the beginning of it. And if it impacted us like that initially off of the first appearance with Jordynne Grace, and now, you know, you got the likes of Joe Hendry and Frank Kazarian showing up. And then, you know, you had Wesley and then you have the Rascals and everything. It's a lot to take in, but I feel like it's going to get more and more exciting as we go. And I think, and the reason why I say that is because I'm still trying to figure out if they're going to go with what I've been predicting for a while. I don't know, but I feel like something bigger is going to be coming along too. And I like it so far. I don't hate it. And it's not a whole 10 for me just yet, but it's right there.
Councilman, your rating of this crossover between TNA and NXT?
I'm probably in the same thing. I'd probably say a 7. And I just hope that they give all the thanks that they should be giving to Roxanne Perez for making this happen. Because had it not been for her, we would not have this amazing crossover, because of that's just a testament of just how great she is as a women's world champion. Ain't none of them other ones been called a women's world champion. And she made them have a whole forbidden door open. I hope they just sent my client a fruit basket or something, you know, some cheeses or anything like that. So
Councilman with a big old plate of petty spaghetti, and I'm here for it.
But I do say a solid 7. I like the something that the mayor said last time was the lower third showing TNA, like when you saw the Rascals out there, seeing that happen in that crossover go over. I think to a point of it filling the seats. But the same as Mark said, you need to have something that defines you to make me want to tune into you. Because even though as of right now, I'm only still just watching NXT. And it hasn't fully brought me in to go like, oh, let me watch TNA each and every single week. Like, I'm going to check out Slammiversary, but it hasn't made me get over there yet. And I don't think that's to NXT side of, you know, having a bigger advantage. I just think, like he said, there's a footing that they just haven't found that makes them stand out to go, let me go check this out. Like they had with their X division like a couple of years back. You wanted to go see these cats perform in those X division matches. So I don't know if that's what they need to do, or maybe introduce a new style of match or something. But yeah, to Mark's point, I feel like we just need a little bit more of something that makes them stand out.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how that all pans out, and if somehow we see some degree of a crossover at Slammiversary this weekend. I'll definitely be looking forward to that. That's again happening Saturday night on TNA Plus. So you guys will want to make sure that you check that out. Now, we mentioned AEW, and we know TNA has a sold-out show. This AEW piece of news is very, very interesting, and I can't wait to have this conversation about it, because there is talk that AEW is looking to do potentially a stadium show stateside. Their city of choice is Dallas, Texas. They're talking about 2025. Mark, what do you think? Can AEW pull off a stadium show stateside in Dallas, Texas in 2025?
Yeah, that's a good question. That is a good question, and I don't know is the answer to that. And I really think it's hard to say at this moment, if it's still almost a year away, what it could look like. But I mean, if they were to do it like right now in the next few months, I don't see, like, unless it's a Bryan Danielson retirement match or something like that, I don't see like that big draw right now. I think they're going to do a great number at Wembley again. There's no doubt about that. I think they're going to have some great matches. You know, I've been enjoying, you know, Swerve Strickland's championship run a lot. They have incredible talent, but, you know, MJF is back and he's a heel again, and it's like, but who is going to put the butts in the seats, and what story and what matches are going to put the butts in the seats in a Cowboy Stadium where we're talking about, you know, 60, 70,000 people in Dallas, not in England where they only go, you know, once a year, where they only went once before. So it's tough. It's going to be a real tough one. Even a 40,000, you know, attendance, and it would be a success for AEW. But nothing stands out to me right now that here's what they can do. Like the Sting retirement did so well in Greensboro because of the geography and because who it was. Is there something like that they can come up with? They can have Ric Flair wrestle his like real final match again. I don't know what they're gonna have in Dallas. I don't know. They're gonna have some Von Erich presence, I would imagine, right? If it's in Dallas, probably they would probably get the Von Erich kids. I don't know, but yeah, it's gonna be really interesting, and I don't know if it's necessary, to be honest with you. Like I don't see it being like, you know, maybe they have something planned that I don't realize, and then there's something coming up that we don't know about, which is probably likely. But as of right now, with the current roster, I just don't see like that big draw that's gonna fill, you know, AT&T Stadium.
Said, what are your thoughts? Can AEW pull off a stadium show stateside in 2025?
That's tough. And now I'm thinking about what type of match they can put on to kind of draw in more outside of your core fans. I know the CEO good for about half of that audience, but we need to make up the other half. So I just have to think, like, if it is a final match with Daniel Bryan, if maybe they can pull some celebrity influence. We see Swerve has a lot of crossover appeal. Who can you bring outside of that's more of like your celebrity wing match or your spectacle to kind of make sure you fill out? Because Dallas, I don't know if everybody here has actually been inside that venue. The Cowboy Stadium is huge. When the WWE sets up there, it fills 80K, but they can squeeze at least, I think, up to where it's to 100,000 in there. So
80K is seated 105,000 with the standing area where the field is. That's the total you can have.
Yeah. So like, unless it's like really major, where it's like once in a lifetime, like Dwayne Cena, like they're going to need to pull something like that off just to make it be a win and not just like another show.
Honey, let me ask you this. Has AEW missed the moment to do this? And I say that because obviously when they started in 2019, it was the hot ticket. They sold out everywhere they went. Obviously, they were derailed a bit by the pandemic as everybody was impacted. You know, we get back to 2021. People are still somewhat happy to see the product. It is a fair statement to say that part of the allure for All In Wembley last year was that it was the UK's first opportunity to ever see any of this AEW product live. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, in the United States, it's a regular thing. Has AEW missed a moment? Should they have tried this earlier? Or can they indeed stack the deck and make this work?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think they did kind of miss a mark, but it's not something that they can't bounce back from if they find, the right possibility or right scenario to do so. Like said, you need like a Sting retirement match, or like something that's like Rock Cena-esque. Like it has to be larger than life. It has to be huge. It has to be big. There has to be storytelling. There has to be history with whatever's going on there. I mean, there are a lot of wrestlers that are from Dallas, so I'm not sure if they could possibly pull some strings for it by that time, being that it's not until when, next year, right? Next year,
sometime next year. They haven't
sometime
given
next
a,
year. So I think they can. They have enough time. They just really need to get the ball rolling on how they're going to prepare for that, because one thing that we've discussed here on the show many times is that, you know, the AEW kind of struggles with the storytelling aspect. There have been moments where they've had, you know, like those moments where you're like, oh, okay, that works. But then there's other things that just completely like fall off the rails and it just doesn't end up working out. I'd say it's about 50-50. I honestly say it's about 50-50. Dallas Stadium is a big stadium, and you have to be ready for that. You know, you have to be prepared with the right kind of show, the right kind of rivalries. You need, you know, and the right superstars to pull it off as well.
One thing that just dawned on me about Dallas is that I think in order for them to have success and get the best possible turnout for that card is that they have to leverage their partnership with CMLL, because Dallas is a very city heavy with Mexicans and Mexican Americans. And they do have that connection with CMLL. You know, Mystico is a big draw in Mexico. I do think he's a draw to Mexican Americans as well, to an extent. And maybe they can pull out some legends, you know, Hijo del Santo, someone like that against Chris Jericho, something like that is historic, that maybe they can pull out for the Mexican market. Because I've covered events in Dallas before. I covered, for instance, like Nate Diaz versus Jake Paul, the boxing match about a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And I showed up to the open workouts, and man, it was Latino as hell in there. It was all Latino. And I'm comfortable saying that because my wife is Mexican and she's from Mexico, so I can talk about that type of deal.
Yeah, we're a little bit everywhere.
She has primos and she has cousins in Dallas. So there's a lot of Mexicans in Dallas, and if they can leverage that connection, you can put a lot of butts in the seats in las sillas, I guess.
So that does lend to the question I was going to ask you, Councilman, which is this: we have Will Ospreay and MJF happening this Wednesday on free television. We have the world champion Swerve Strickland against the Continental champion Okada on free television this week. We've seen some of the matches that they have, you know, pulled off for their pay-per-views, which, you know, have been in 5,000, 10,000, 16,000 seat arenas. What would they have to do? What's the match or set of matches that has to happen to fill up a stadium? Because what I'm hearing is they could be intending for this to be their biggest show ever.
It's more than matches, though. It's going to be more than matches of what they're going to need. You literally need to copy the format of WrestleMania. Like, as of right now, Dallas will show up for wrestling. They love wrestling, but they also are very dedicated wrestlers to certain things. So, like, for WWE to come in, they'll go see these people. I'm not sure so many people are attached to the wrestlers at AEW as they are opposed to WWE. I could be wrong, but I don't think they're as attached to them to fully fill out these seats. Like you said, I think Brian, Monet, if Brian's retiring, Monet is there. To Cedric's point, you might get 50. If to Marc's point, you throw in some of these CML people and give us some of the matches that we've dreamed of, even some stuff from New Japan, that could work. You are literally going to have to pull out every favor, every stop that you are going to need in order to fill this arena up. And you need to be doing some stuff like on the weekends outside of the stadium to really start getting the entire city knowing that, hey, we're finna be here. Because I take it like their WrestleMania is all in, right? You can
pretty much say that at this point. Yeah.
So you need an all-in week. You need to be there for everything. Needs to be there. Even all of your brand deals you have. Like if the Young Bucks are doing something with Reebok, they need to drop a new shoe collaboration that week that you can only get there. You need something to where you're building your experience for AEW for a stadium like this. You need to be able to walk away with, not only did I see great matches, I had a fantastic weekend in Dallas thanks to AEW. And I can't wait for Wednesday's Dynamite to see the aftermath now because I'm a sold fan. So it's a lot of elements they're going to need to make this work. But as far as a match, yeah, you need to work on your storytelling right now for your AEW champion, your TBS women's TBS champion, and your women's champion. So I would definitely say you need to save this Britt Baker, Mercedes Moné, and possibly a Toni Storm triple threat match. I'm still gonna keep promoting that. I think that'll add to your stuff. I think to Mark's point, a legendary person from CML versus a Jericho or versus someone else, even like a Jeff Jarrett if he comes back. I think because again he's big in Texas. Like you said, some Von Erich. Von Erich action. You have to bring out the big guns here for this one.
Yeah, this is going to get interesting. So we've got a counter question that Dylan has. He says, has AEW ever had a ticket to jump on that got those kinds of numbers?
That boat.
Has
ever had a ticket to jump on that boat?
On that boat of
you
getting
okay, Dylan?
those
you okay,
numbers.
bro? Want to edit? Do they allow edit in New York, Parker?
They don't.
Yeah, they don't. I'm trying to make sure I understand the question. I don't want to assume, but I do think that
my bro hit the bong. I think Dylan hit the bong early. I think. What are you saying? What are you saying?
It's early.
I want to say he's asking if they've ever had a card that can match that card. Yeah.
To where you could make that jump to that many.
But what are we talking about? Boats and like what is going on here, bro?
I think for AEW, here's what's weird. They've actually presented some very strong cards. The Sting retirement show, that card was really, really stacked. Crazy. You had Takeshita and Will Ospreay. I mean, you had a triple threat that night. It was Samoa Joe, Hangman, and Swerve for the world title. You had Sting and Darby and the Young Bucks. To me, I think I have to echo Councilman's point is getting matches isn't a problem. Sometimes I'd argue that their cards are too long, right? Yeah. Like 12, 13 matches, 5-6 hours is too long. I'm already frightened thinking about how long that card is going to be in Dallas. That card is going to be 2 days long. Like it's just without them saying it's a 2-day show. Like it's going to be crazy. I think I think you're right. They've got to tell great stories. Now, with what they just did with Mariah May and Toni Storm, that's a great story that they're telling.
Oh my God. Yes.
A fantastic. What they did with Hangman and Swerve, a great story. They have the potential to do it. The question is, can they do it consistently enough to make us want to fill up 60, 70,000 seat stadium?
Okay. So can I ask y'all this question then, since you are all fans? What is a match that would make you go to Dallas? If they announced it and you said, oh, this will make me go to Dallas. Dang, you got quiet.
I know of only one thing. I'm going to let Mark go first.
I mean, they have a couple. I mean, they only did Omega versus Bryan Danielson once. Right, mm-hmm. that's still a match that they can do again. It should be in a big spot. They still have a Omega versus Okada rematch from New Japan that they can do. This is provided Kenny Omega is actually healthy, because I know it's been a scary few months for him. But I mean, we've already seen Omega Ospreay. We've already seen Ospreay against Danielson. We're gonna see Ospreay at MJF in a few days. There's nothing that stands out to me that we haven't necessarily seen, unless they have some people coming. Maybe they have some free agents that we don't know about they're going to be getting. But I think they're going to have to leverage their relationships with New Japan and CMLL. But they've already done that. You know, they've done that to an extent, and they've already taken New Japan's biggest stars, you know, in the U.S. and they're already on the roster and they're already kind of in the mix. So it has to be a combination of like great, you know, 2 or 3 great stories. You know, a big star that we're not thinking of, maybe like a Goldberg, someone who's a free agent, you know, like a legend who's a big star, you know, greats from Mexico, legendaries from Mexico, the Von Erichs. It has to be a combination, I think, of all those things. And then you throw in, I think it has to be the right time. Maybe you do it Cinco de Mayo weekend. You know, make it a party, make it an event, make it something. You know, the UFC is doing a Mexican Independence Day show for the 2nd straight year in Vegas, and it was really big last year, and it's going to be even bigger at the Sphere this year. Maybe you do something like that, but is there one match that's going to sell 50,000 seats? No, there's nothing that I can see on their roster right now. Anyway.
Said, and you think there's what do you think?
Like one match that'll like sell me to go to die. Currently, probably not. I can't foresee anything currently that like they haven't done already. I mean, I think in the women's division, you still kind of have some play on Mercedes and Saraya that you can do from their past together. But even that is like, are you going to be really excited for the match more than the story? Where there's a lot of those scenarios that are scattered throughout AEW that I just don't know. I think for me, it would have to be knowing that this is this person's final match. Like, is this Bryan Danielson's final match? Is this Chris Jericho's final match? And that's it. I think that is something that will bring more people in as opposed to trying to fill out this card of like first time evers and all the likes like that.
What about Adam Copeland versus Bryan Danielson, loser retires? I'm just asking y'all. What do you?
How about either way they both retire?
That match don't do much to me because the last time I saw those two in the ring together, they was stacked.
Stacked by who?
They were.
They were.
Like, well, you could give them that rightful one-on-one that they should have had, that everybody would have liked to see. Both former retired WWE superstars that were forced to retire due to career-threatening injuries, and both were told the same thing, that they'd never be able to wrestle again. And then you have one-on-one, no bragging rights, no titles, no nothing, just pure greatness. And maybe add a cool stipulation, anything that doesn't involve Edge jumping and standing in the ring from the top of a Hell in the Cell, please God. But I don't know. I feel like that. I feel like that could possibly, if they do that right. But I don't know. I really don't know.
I want to be very fair into the next thing I'm going to say, and so I'm going to say this in with all respect. I think the only way this happens, that they fill this seat up, that makes us automatically interested, is if someone drops their ego and they partner with WWE. That's the only way it's happening. If they only need one person, they don't need a whole card. If you get one person from WWE as a contracted WWE star to come in for this battle, you fill it up. But I don't think that I genuinely think that Tony Khan wants to do it from whatever he has amassed. And to do that, you just have to get some work done. A whole lot of work done.
Because not for nothing, WWE knows how to sell out Dallas Stadium. They've done it before.
Exactly.
Done it before. They just take them. The Triple H just take them under the wing and be like, "I'll show you how to do this, son."
Yep.
So it's going to be interesting to see for sure. Of course, tonight, Monday Night Raw goes down. Mommy is back. Drew is back. And Ilya Dragunov is getting a shot at the Intercontinental title. Like, this is must see. Like, this is must see.
Take notes, TK.
Yeah.
Fake TK.
Yeah.
Not the boss lady.
That goes down tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern. We're going to get ready to wrap things up. Marc, by all means, let people know how they can follow you on the socials, how they can connect with you, pre-order the book, all of the things.
At Marc Raimondi on X. I guess we're calling it X, right? MARCRAI MONDI. I call it Twitter too. I mean, I'm never gonna give that up. Marc Raimondi Sports on Instagram, MARCRAI MONDI Sports, and that's really it. You can catch my work, at ESPN. I'm covering the Atlanta Falcons. Football season's coming soon, but as far as the book goes, the NWO book, anywhere that you can pre-order, you can pre-order right now. It's on Amazon. Say hello to the bad guys. It's right over my shoulder here. How professional wrestling's new world order changed America. Hopefully it doesn't suck, and everyone likes the book. I'm pretty nervous, like I said. It means a lot to me. It's a big task, right? When you have something that means a lot to you, that means a lot to a lot of people, and you want to try to do the best you could do, like exceed your own expectations to, and I hope that I've done that. And time will tell, though, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, remember, you guys, we just put the link again to pre-order on Amazon, so definitely do that. And we'll definitely have to have Marc back before this book officially launches, because I'm just excited to see all of the cool things that are coming with this. Seth, how can the people find you?
I guess I'll be found today. You can find me on Twitter at SaidSays. That's CEDD_SAYS. On the gram, it says the answer. Check out all my journalism work on CedricDWelton.com. I did have two selfish non-wrestling questions for Marc before we got up out of here. Just two real quick ones. If it ever happens, who wins between Pereira and John Jones? And is it safe to trust Kyle Pitts in fantasy this season?
Oh, okay. Those are right in both in my wheelhouse. I would have to pick John Jones, because we haven't seen Alex Pereira's wrestling really get challenged. We've only seen fighters stand up with him inexplicably, right? Because that you stand up with Alex Pereira, you're pretty much going to sleep. John Jones is not going to do that. He's going to take him down the same way he did Cyril Gahn. So John Jones he's going to be old if that fight ever happens. So it's hard to say. But if John Jones wrestles, I think he has an advantage. Kyle Pitts, I mean, look, man, it's like his rookie season, dude was the man, like record-breaking season, one of the best rookie tight end seasons of all time. But then it was injuries, it was inconsistency, it was more injuries. I think it'll be a good season. There's a new coaching staff, there's a new scheme. He's going to be playing a little bit of wide receiver this year. So if you have Kyle Pitts on your fantasy football team, your dynasty team, I think it should be a pretty darn solid year for that guy.
Awesome. Councilman, how can they find you, sir?
You can just find me at Will Farrell, PHARAOH. I was glad to be on here tonight, especially to see this interview, because unfortunately I will not be here until next Wednesday. I'm going out of town, so this was just so great. I got to put that Big Back Championship on the line this Saturday against Thick Neck Thaddeus, so got to get in the gym and get ready. So for my match Saturday, I'm very excited. So I will let y'all know about that when I get back on Wednesday. But yeah, it's just Will Farrell on everything.
Thank you, Will. Honey, how can we find you?
You can find me here always Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays with the WWT Live crew. Let's see. Friday nights, we have our Honey Night SmackDown watch along. So make sure you guys stay tuned for those. I think Boss Lady's going to be cooking up some more watch alongs. I'm not sure exactly when and where, but make sure you guys stay tuned here. And also you can find me at All Things Wrestling with Honey TikTok, Wrestling with Honey Instagram, Facebook Wrestling W Honey, and the YouTube Wrestling with Honey podcast. And you will also find me at the nearest Barnes & Nobles purchasing Marc's book, because I am an avid book reader and I can't wait. March 2025. Here we come.
Hardcover, no digital for this.
I get the hardcover. That's right.
I need the hardcovers. I love a good book.
Absolutely. We are excited about that. Of course, you guys can find me at Bonnerfied, like all the books there. Yeah, you can find me at Bonnerfied across all of the social spaces. You can check out my commentary work with Southern Honor Wrestling and IWE on IWTV. You can check out my commentary work with the Nightmare Factory and Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling on the Nightmare Factory YouTube page. You can also check out my commentary work with All Caribbean Wrestling. And shout out to them as one of the great sponsors here at Women's Wrestling Talk. And you can check out my work with Ashe Wrestling at AsheWrestling.com. Some very fun things happening there. Again, make sure you're following us here at Women's Wrestling Talk, WWTalkpod, across all of the social spaces. Lots of great things happening there. Make sure you're checking out the website, www.talkpod.com. Once again, make sure you are following Marc. Marc is a great wealth of knowledge, as you guys have experienced, and you can find him on the socials at Marc Raimondi Sports on Instagram, and I believe on X as well. Of course, you can pre-order his new book on Amazon and wherever books are sold. Again, that book is called Say Hello to the Bad Guys, How Pro Wrestling's New World Order Changed America. I can't wait to read this because I know it's going to be a great, great read. Shout out to everybody in the chat: Matt, Dylan, Jeffrey, Cousin Ron, Boza, Eric. There have been a lot of people. I saw Cindy in here, Jeffrey, All-Star Fandom, lots of people, Dylan. Just appreciate you guys rocking with us. It is not the same without you. So again, here at Women's Wrestling Talk, we got all kinds of cool things happening. But of course, WWT Live happens every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right here. Until then, this has been Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling network on the planet. Peace.
Thanks for joining WWT. Don't forget to like us on all social media platforms at WWTalkpod. Like and subscribe on all video and audio platforms, like yesterday, my G. And check out our website at www.talkpod.com. Thanks for watching Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling network on the planet.